Do Look Under the Bed, a true horror story. If you ever wake up in the middle of the night and feel like something is watching you from under your bed, don't check. Because what I saw that night was not supposed to be there. This happened to me when I was 17 years old. At that time, I lived with my parents in a small apartment. My room was simple, just a bed, a study table, and a dim night lamp that I always kept on. I was never afraid of the dark, at least not until that night. It was around 3:07 a.m. when I suddenly woke up. I don't know why. The room was completely silent. Then I heard it. Tap-tap. At first, I thought it was coming from outside, maybe something hitting the window, but then I realized the sound was coming from under my bed. My heart started beating faster. I stayed completely still, listening carefully. Again. Tap-tap. Something was definitely under my bed. I slowly sat up, my throat felt dry, then I heard a voice. Hey, look down. My entire body froze, because that voice sounded exactly like my own voice. Every instinct in my body told me not to look, but something inside me forced me to move. Slowly I leaned forward and looked under the bed. At first I saw nothing, just darkness. Then suddenly, two eyes opened right in front of me. They were glowing, staring directly at me. Before I could react, a hand shot out from the darkness and grabbed my wrist. It was ice cold, not human. I screamed and pulled my hand back. I fell off the bed and crawled backward in fear. My entire body was shaking. I looked at the bed again, and what I saw next still haunts me to this day. There was someone sitting on my bed. Someone who looked exactly like me. Same face, same body, same clothes. But its eyes were completely black. It slowly smiled at me and said, "Now you go under." I don't remember what happened after that. The next thing I knew, I woke up in a hospital. My parents said they found me unconscious on the floor. But something was wrong. Very wrong. Because from that night, every time I try to sleep, I hear that same sound again. Tap-tap. And sometimes, I feel like something is already under my bed, waiting for me to look again. Ghost story number 2, The Locked Room Upstairs, a true horror story. There was always one room in our house that we were never allowed to open. It was upstairs at the very end of a narrow hallway. The door was old, made of dark wood, and it was always locked. No matter what time of day it was, that door stayed closed. When I was younger, I asked my parents about it many times, but they always gave me the same answer. It's just an old storage room. But something about it never felt right. This happened when I was 15 years old. One night, my parents had to go out to attend a family emergency in another town. They told me to stay home and said they would return the next morning. I wasn't scared. I had stayed home alone before. At least I thought I was. Everything was normal until around midnight. I was sitting in the living room watching TV when the power suddenly went out. The entire house went dark. At first, I thought it was just a normal power cut. That happened often in our area. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight. The house felt different in the dark. Too quiet. Too still. I decided to go to my room upstairs and try to sleep. As I reached the top of the stairs, I froze. I heard a sound. A slow, dragging noise. Coming from the end of the hallway. From the locked room. I stood there holding my breath. The sound continued. Something was moving inside that room. Slowly. Like something being dragged across the floor. I tried to tell myself it was nothing. Maybe something had fallen. Maybe an animal got inside. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. Because whatever was inside was moving too slowly. Too deliberately. I slowly walked down the hallway. Each step felt heavier than the last. The closer I got to the door, the louder the sound became. Then suddenly, it stopped. The silence was worse than the noise. I stood right in front of the door. My hand was shaking. I don't know why, but I reached out and touched the handle. It was cold, freezing cold. And then, I noticed something impossible. The door was slightly open. I was sure it had been locked before. Slowly, I pushed it open. The room inside was completely dark. My phone light barely lit the space. It was empty. No furniture. No boxes. Nothing. Just an old dusty floor. I felt confused. There was nothing inside. So what made that noise? I took a step inside the room. Then another. The air inside felt heavy. Hard to breathe. And then, I heard it again. This time behind me. From the hallway. I turned around quickly. And that's when I saw it. At the end of the hallway. Something was standing there. Tall. Unnaturally tall. Its body was thin, almost stretched. Its head tilted slightly to one side. And its face. I couldn't see it clearly. But I could feel it staring at me. My heart stopped. I couldn't move. It took one slow step forward. Then another. Its movement was wrong. Like its joints didn't bend properly. I stumbled backward into the room. My phone slipped from my hand. The light flickered. For a second, everything went dark. When the light came back, the hallway was empty. The thing was gone. I stood there shaking, trying to understand what just happened. Then I heard a whisper, right next to my ear. "Don't leave." I froze. I slowly turned my head and saw something standing inside the room with me, right behind the door, closer than I could imagine. Its face was inches away from mine. And this time, I saw it clearly. It had no eyes, just empty dark holes, and a mouth that stretched too wide. It smiled. I screamed and ran. I don't remember how I got downstairs. I ran outside the house and didn't stop. I stayed outside until morning. When my parents came back, I told them everything. They didn't look surprised. That was the worst part. My father stayed silent for a long time. Then he said something I will never forget. That room was never empty. I asked him what he meant, but he refused to explain. That same day, they locked the room again. But this time, they added another lock. And another. And another. Now, years later, I don't live in that house anymore. But sometimes, late at night, I still hear that same whisper in my head. "Don't leave." And I always wonder, what would have happened if I stayed? Ghost story number 3, The Voice from the Mirror, a true horror story. It started with something small. Something so normal that I didn't even think about it at first. A whisper. Soft. Faint. Almost like it wasn't even real. This happened when I was living alone in a small apartment in the city. I had just moved in a few weeks earlier. It was a quiet place, nothing unusual. At least that's what I thought. The first time I heard it, I was brushing my teeth in the bathroom. The mirror in front of me was slightly old, with small black spots around the edges. The light above it flickered sometimes, but I didn't pay much attention. As I looked at my reflection, I suddenly felt something strange. Like someone was standing behind me, watching me. I quickly turned around, but there was no one there. I laughed it off, told myself it was just my imagination. Then I heard it, very softly. "Don't turn around." I froze. The voice came from right behind me. But when I looked again, there was still no one there. My heart started beating faster. Slowly, I looked back at the mirror. And for a split second, I saw something behind me. A shadow, standing right over my shoulder. I turned again. Nothing. The bathroom was empty. That night I couldn't sleep properly. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt like something was watching me. The next day, I tried to ignore it. I went to work, came back home late, and avoided the bathroom mirror as much as possible. But eventually, I had to go back. As I stood in front of the mirror again, I avoided looking directly at my reflection. But something pulled my eyes back. And that's when I noticed it. My reflection wasn't moving exactly the same as me. At first, it was very subtle. A delay, a fraction of a second. But it was there. When I raised my hand, my reflection followed, just a little too late. I stepped back. My reflection smiled. I didn't. My blood ran cold. I slowly backed away from the mirror. But my reflection didn't stop smiling. That night, things got worse. Around 3 a.m., I woke up suddenly. I don't know what woke me, but I felt it again. That presence, stronger this time. I looked toward the bathroom. The door was slightly open, and the light inside was on. I was sure I had turned it off before sleeping. Slowly, I got out of bed and walked toward it. Each step felt heavier. The air felt thick. As I reached the door, I pushed it open. The mirror was facing directly toward me, and I saw myself standing there. But I wasn't inside the bathroom. I was still at the door. Yet my reflection was already there. Inside, staring at me. It tilted its head. Slowly. Then it spoke. "Come closer." I couldn't move. My body felt frozen. It lifted its hand and pressed it against the mirror. From the inside. Then something impossible happened. The surface of the mirror rippled, like water, and a hand started pushing through it, reaching out toward me. I stumbled backward in terror. The hand stretched out further, longer than it should have been. Its fingers were thin, twisted, not human. I ran. I didn't stop. I left the apartment that night and never went back. A few days later, I returned with a friend to collect my belongings. I tried to act normal, tried to convince myself it was all in my head. But before leaving, I looked at the bathroom one last time. The mirror was covered with a cloth. My friend asked why I covered it. I didn't answer. As we were about to leave, I heard it again. A whisper from behind the cloth. "Why did you leave me alone?" I turned slowly, and for a brief moment, I saw my reflection through the cloth. Still smiling, still waiting. I moved to a new place after that. A different apartment, different city. But sometimes, late at night, when I walk past a mirror, I feel it again. That presence, watching, waiting, and sometimes, if I look long enough, my reflection smiles. For story number 4, The Train That Never Stops, a true horror story. There is a train in my town that doesn't exist on any schedule. No one talks about it during the day. But at night, people pretend not to hear it. I didn't believe any of that. Not until I saw it myself. This happened in 2018 when I was traveling back to my hometown after a long time. My journey was delayed, and by the time I reached the local station, it was already past 1:30 a.m. The station was almost empty. A few dim lights flickered above the platform. The ticket counter was closed. There were no announcements, no movement, just silence. I checked the schedule board. The last train had already left. I sighed, thinking I would have to wait until morning. That's when I noticed something strange. On the far end of the platform, there was someone sitting on a bench. An old man. He was staring straight ahead, completely still. I walked over and asked him, "Is there any train coming tonight?" He didn't look at me. He just said very quietly, "One will come." His voice felt wrong. Cold. Empty. I asked when. He replied, "You'll know when you hear it." I felt uncomfortable and walked away. The sound. About 15 minutes later, I heard it. A distant sound. A train horn. But something about it was strange. It sounded distorted. Long. Echoing. Like it didn't belong in this world. The rails began to vibrate. The lights on the platform flickered violently. Then slowly, a train appeared. But it wasn't like any train I had seen before. It was old. Very old. The metal looked rusted. The windows were dark. Too dark. As if they swallowed the light. The train stopped in front of me. The doors opened. No one got off. No one was inside. At least that's what I thought. The inside. I don't know why I did it. Maybe curiosity. Maybe something else. But I stepped inside. The moment I entered, the door slammed shut behind me. The train started moving immediately. I turned around, trying to open the door. But it wouldn't budge. The inside of the train was silent. Too silent. The seats were empty. But the air felt heavy. Like I wasn't alone. I walked down the aisle slowly. My footsteps echoed unnaturally loud. Then I noticed something. On one of the seats, there was a bag. Old. Covered in dust. I reached out to touch it. And suddenly, a voice whispered right next to my ear. "You shouldn't be here." I froze. I turned around quickly. No one. But now I could feel it clearly. Someone was behind me. Breathing. The passengers. I looked back at the seats. And this time, they weren't empty. People were sitting there. Dozens of them. All silent. All staring at me. Their faces were pale. Lifeless. Some had empty eyes. Some had no eyes at all. My heart stopped. None of them blinked. None of them moved. Except one. At the far end of the carriage. A man slowly stood up. He looked at me. And smiled. His smile was too wide. Too unnatural. Then he said, "This train doesn't take the living." The escape. I panicked. I ran toward the other end of the train. The doors were locked. The windows showed nothing but darkness. Not outside darkness. Something deeper. Like the train wasn't moving through the real world anymore. The passengers slowly stood up. One by one. All of them facing me. The man started walking toward me. Slow. Calm. Like he knew I couldn't escape. I backed away. My hands shaking. My breath uneven. Then suddenly, the train jerked violently. The lights went out. For a second, everything was black. Completely black. Then the doors opened. The ending. I didn't think. I just jumped. I fell hard onto the platform. When I looked up, The train was gone. The station was silent again. Empty. As if nothing had happened. Except the old man was still there, sitting on the bench. This time he looked at me and said, "You were lucky." I asked him what he meant, but he just stood up and walked away. Aftermath. The next morning, I asked the locals about the train. Most people avoided the question, but one person finally told me the truth. Years ago, there was a train accident near that station. Dozens of people died. Since then, some nights, a train arrives, but it's not for the living. I never go near that station at night anymore. But sometimes, when everything is quiet, I still hear it. That distant horn, calling, waiting for the next passenger.